by now you should have already determined how many words you need each question. Have you done that? You cannot wait. You're gonna run out of time. You're gonna cry. Heed my warning. No. You have to be structured. You have to know from before you put pen to paper how much words you need to answer the question. After you've read the questions, you need to write on the side of each question which chapters you need to focus on in order to get your answer. Then you delve into the question to see what else you need in order to answer the question. You can't wait till the last minute. So since you haven't read the question, we can't discuss the question. No. Who's we? I saw 3 hands. 4 hands. So, what is it about?
It's different questions. Like
What? No. See, she didn't read the question.
You mean which question that you mean with the fire typologies?
Yes, that one. Yes, that one. That's the one we're discussing. So what's the question about?
Dealing with terrorist financing and the challenges. Far left rule. That's all I get to. I see terrorists. I look in for terrorist financing typologies. Any challenges? See this one, risk-based approach.
No, we remember that one now. You ain't there yet. When you read the questions, you need to read the questions to see which chapters they refer to.
C is chapter 2.
Okay, so C is chapter 2. What are they asking you for? What is this?
Far left rule.
It's been a long time from last week.
Terrorist
No.
financing
No.
typologies.
Tell Michael to take that down.
And challenges. And identifying.
So, for those who read, hands up again. See, let me tell you the issue with this. If you don't read these questions, all of them before you come to class, and determine what chapter they are related to, then when you go to answer the question, you're going to have difficulties. Because we're no longer going to be there to help you. And each lecturer lectures differently. You understand what I mean? So some will come here and they will do just the chapter. That's it. You be on your own. So I'm trying to prepare you now. You need to prepare before you come to class. So let's just say I didn't ask you anything about this at all today. And I went straight into the chapter, which I don't read. You read. I'll point out what's important and where you need to go. Tell me, how will that help you? How will that help you answer the question if you haven't read it? You can't come next week with a question because we'll be finished with that unit. It's done. Next week, we come to talk about something else. Thank you. You want to pass this, right? So you have to get serious. Okay.
It says in February 2018. But in the, at least the book, as far as I remember, we didn't speak to 2018. I know that they had some directives after. I think that's the 12, no, it was the 14, and then you had the 9, and then there was another one that came after that with the recommendations. I think that's what they're referring to.
More than that.
More than that. So there's something further, because I
Yes.
remember them.
The book is at a point in time.
Yeah, this 2000.
When the question comes,
yeah.
the questions are always beyond the book. I told you all that last week. Everything is beyond the book. The book just gives you just an introduction. Everything else requires you to research. So it's just the beginning. All right? What else? So she borrowed 1 point. Next point. Any other issues you have with the question and the text?
issues, not really. For B, when they asked about evaluate the potential money laundering offenses, using the law, is it fair to say that like HOCA could be used when
That's
it
the
talks
only one you
about?
can use.
Yeah.
That's yours. Don't ever write about another country's laws,
Yeah.
because you wouldn't know it as well as the people who actually live in that jurisdiction.
Okay, questions on everything?
No, we're doing C, she just pointed out, she just asking a general question.
See,
Okay, go ahead.
the challenges in identifying the activities and practice, I guess, for the terrorist financing typologies.
Mm-hmm.
Are we focusing in general or challenges like that our jurisdiction may face?
But in,
It's twofold.
Mm,
It's twofold.
in this type of question though, I mean, we've had a few cases where we maybe could be linked to terrorist financing, but they're like ancient cases. So because you don't have anything current, would you then draw in from another jurisdiction?
This question doesn't ask you to speak to your jurisdiction.
It doesn't. But I mean, I thought the understanding was whenever, because of the jurisdiction that we're in.
If you had
whenever
one, you
have-
could
and that's
add
what
it.
I'm saying, so.
But if you look at B, B is asking you to refer to your jurisdiction.
It's a choice though.
Your choice is here.
Automatically.
It's here, right here.
Okay.
Unless they're giving you another jurisdiction and actually,
Specifically.
yeah, no, you
Okay,
stick here.
and so because of this, and we don't, there's nothing particular.
That's a
for us to
general
just-
question.
This will be just.
It's a general question.
But if we find something for our jurisdiction.
Then you can, yes,
Right.
but it's a general question. What else?
And the same thing with A, we're doing general.
I have a question.
That's general.
And do we bring in, if we're talking about it, would we bring in, when we discuss things, when we have pending legislation, are we at liberty to discuss? Okay.
I have a question, see. Where they say the main typologies and terrorist financing, is this just FADF, or if another organization has something that talks about, do we mention that as well?
Any more? I getting questions on this side. What happened over here? No questions? You good? Oh, no, 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 I don't know nothing but the booklet. Also got the booklet, they registered lady, something like that, last week. They couldn't get
No,
online.
they hadn't given us a,
Oh, okay, yeah, so you have to download it.
this ain't really a booklet, it's only,
That's only the
Trust me,
first chapter, the
this
first
ain't even-
unit, the first two
this ain't even the
units.
first unit, this nothing.
Just enough.
When you go
Yeah,
on
this
it.
is it. This is the full document. And if you don't read everything on the computer, by the time you finish your course, you have about 3 of those. Yeah.
This may not be a smart question, right?
Go ahead.
But
No question's a dumb question.
when it
Ask.
says, could you clarify main typologies?
We can discuss all that right now.
Okay.
And that's to make sure that you read the question. So when I speak and you understand the question, you can ask me questions. Because I am not supposed to assist you in answering the question at all. That's why I'm trying to pull it out of you. Did you read the question? So when I speak, if it's something you don't understand, like the question she just asked and the question she just asked, I can bring it into the lecture. You see what I mean? But if you've not read the question, then you can't ask the question. Alright? So last week we spoke about our local AML framework. What did we discuss? Our local AML framework.
HOCA,
Type of
FTRA,
legislation and,
FTTR,
Yes.
FTRR.
What happened?
So all of the
What do you bring that?
legislation
Yes,
Just
all.
get some legislation today.
and our international affiliation, the bodies that we affiliated with.
Our regulators,
All the rest of them.
Yeah.
all that lovely stuff.
Compliance.
ICA.
Commission.
CB.
all of this, right? That's our AML framework in the jurisdiction. And that's what you turn to answer B, because that's your source. And when you refer to your legislation, you do not write it verbatim. You must be able to put it in your own words. Now when you read Unit 2 speaks about these international organizations that are responsible for the AML framework in all the other jurisdictions. So the leading international organization for money laundering is the FATF. And the FATF is responsible for the recommendations that financial institutions and the jurisdictions must follow. So these recommendations by the FATF are incorporated in the AML framework.
Oh, yeah, you said that on that mutual evaluation.
The mutual evaluations are done on these recommendations. So who did their homework from last week?
Reading.
Do what?
We didn't, we downloaded, we prepared.
You're preparing these
Yes,
to read them,
yes,
so you have to read them.
yes.
So now, what happened?
I mean, I have them.
Maybe download.
Did you read them?
I didn't read all, but I mean, I didn't know it all.
That was a lot in a week.
Yeah, I was trying to forget.
Anyhow, moving on, download, read.
You downloaded
You have to refer to that also.
1 week to download.
Well, you either download it, or you read it from, be going from page to page to page. You have to know the recommendations. Know the recommendations, plus the Bahamas deficiencies to those recommendations.
All of that is
And,
it's repetitive though, it's quite
What?
redundant, that document.
which one? The
The
recommendation?
40 recommendations for the Bahamas. Like a lot of it,
Oh, you mean the Bahamas deficiencies?
no,
Which one?
LERs, the deficiencies.
no, there's a document called the 40 recommendations.
That's the main.
That's the main
Yeah.
document from FATF.
Yeah, like, it seems like a lot, but I think it's quite redundant.
Yeah, but see, things overlap because they go by topic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's what I'm saying, it's not
Yeah.
really.
It's
going
not
through it,
difficult to
it's,
read.
you know, it's quite redundant.
What happened? What's all the mumbling?
No, I ain't talking about the recommendations.
it
I
becomes-
talked
it
about the
becomes your
visual
Bible.
evaluation. The
Yeah.
visual
You
that,
need to, you
the
need to read that to
deficiencies.
look at the
The deficiencies,
deficiencies
yeah.
in order to comment on
On-
this.
uh-huh.
They go together.
That one is 147 pages.
Repeat.
But
This,
this
really redundant. Because I know
along with this,
it's really redundant.
together is the framework for doing this half of the course. So it says in the text what the FATF undertakes a range of tasks, and it tells you what it is that they're responsible for doing. And it gives you the history of when the first one was done, when it was revised, why it was revised, which you can read. Then it gives you the membership. And remember, the membership is as at a point in time. So if you go on the website will give you the members. And then whenever we have our mutual evaluations, it's done by
CFAD. The plan of the children.
And you notice from your reading that every region has its own sub-audit, all representing the FATF. And so they give you a list at the bottom.
That's wrong in here, actually. They don't refer to it as CFAD. They forget the Caribbean. Yeah.
Oh, they have it there, oh yeah.
It does in mine.
Mine does.
This one is kind of.
On page 27,
Oh,
it
so
does
the old one
refer
would
to
give
it.
us.
Yeah, that's any character. I know this one is
See
different.
mine right here, mine's the
I
Caribbean.
remind the one with the print up us.
Oh, you probably got an old one. Mine's the Caribbean, yours is Caribbean.
Mine does.
Which one?
Yours is Caribbean, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so she has the latest.
No, I printed out the latest, but I just.
Okay, oh, that's an old one.
Yeah.
She printed the easiest one, I guess. Plus, don't forget, now you're responsible for getting the latest one, you know. She only gave you something to follow until you download
I
it.
need not read this thing.
What unit is unit?
That's unit 2. What happened? Yours is correct. No, the pages are different. Because yours is on page 27, mine is on page 24.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And where did I say you could find the Bahamas deficiencies?
And the mutual.
Mutual evaluation report. And in conjunction with that, what did the steering committee put out? In conjunction with the mutual evaluation report, what did they put out? Yes, they put out a couple page thing. Yes. Didn't they put out their plan of action? Are they going to address all the deficiencies? Yes, they did. So you need to have that also. Because you don't want to be talking out your head. Mhm. Bear in mind, the Bahamas is still on the deficiency listing. And you have to think about the impact to the jurisdiction. So out of all of these mutual evaluation report and other reports, the FATF produces typologies, which are case studies. They give you the facts of the case, they tell you what happened, they identify the risk, they speak about the challenges, whatever jurisdiction it's from. So when you go to your question, the question that she asks, outline the main typologies of terrorist financing, you will get that from these listing of typologies. So go to your book. Right here, page 31. That's the beginning. Right here. So it's either 28, 27, or 31, depends on which version you have. You over here. So when you go on the FATF website, it has the typologies. If you have your thing and you go on it now, you'll be able to see it. Go to FATF, you see typologies. They have typologies on different items. One could be on corruption, one could be on transporting cash, one could be dealing with diamonds. There are typologies on all different things that are vulnerable to money laundering. So you have to read it, and you have to then find out what are the challenges that are presented in the paper. Okay?
Challenges, so we read them, the typology.
Yes, you have to read it.
And we know them, the challenges and
Yes.
technology.
Not each one. The one related to what the one that relates to terrorist finance. You choose to read them all? Yes, you do. So you want me to tell you how to read it too now, right?
So when they say the challenges of identifying these activities and practice, they mean identifying it and stopping it.
The typology within. Why there is a difficulty in identifying terrorist financing from a practical standpoint. So you look at the listing and the methods and trends. Emerging terrorist financing risk. You see that one, the third bullet point? So then would you need to go and to the FATF website and see if they issue any additional ones on terrorist financing? And they have. But you have to start from the beginning and then go to the present. Yeah. But you have to read the articles. So they have one here. One is on financing of the terrorist organization Islamic State in Iraq and Levant. That's another terrorist financing one. Money laundering financing through trade in diamonds. The role of Hawala. Terrorist financing in West Africa. You see all these terrorist financing? So you have to read all of them. And when you read them, then you begin to see a commonality. God, it was pretty easy. So the FATF is also responsible in pushing the risk-based approach. And for the Bahamas, that meant doing what? National risk assessment. So you need to read that too.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
When we speak to risk-based approach, we just looking at it from a finance standpoint.
Depends on the question.
I mean, if it's still a risk-based approach, checking them out and seeking out.
You done with the D?
Yeah.
That's not true.
You go general and you go specific to your jurisdiction.
The central bank has this document called guidelines, the central bank guidelines on the supervision of financial institutions. Is that a summary of?
That's the AML guidance.
Because here it talks about risk reading and risk self-assessment. So
That's what
secondary-
that's what the institution has to do for its clients. This one here, the National Risk Assessment, is saying what every constituent in this jurisdiction, whether it's gaming, real estate, I don't know, securities, banking, every sector. That's what that's about. The police force, customs, everybody.
Okay,
That's what the national one is about.
okay.
Because all of those, every one of those different entities has to be able to identify money laundering. And how do they mitigate against the risk? So that's why you see everything now is connected to the VAT system. To stop corruption, fraud, and whatever else you'll be dealing with. Crimes. So the next international is the EU directives. And I think this one stops at a point in time to the third directive, which was implemented in 2007. Then you have the fourth and fifth AML directives. So if and when you answer your questions and you select a firm that operates not just in the Bahamas, but also has clients from Europe, you have to refer to the EU directives. Because whatever you do locally, if you have clients from abroad, they have two different AML directives to follow. Understand what I mean? So you're banking in the Bahamas, but your clients are from France, you have to follow this one and the Bahamas directives. So you'll have to read the first, the second, the third, and the fourth directives, and all amendments there too. Everybody with me? Okay. So the next one is the IMF. Anyone knows what the IMF is responsible for?
Regulating exchange.
Come on, the central bank always announcing they're about to do something. Come on. What are those words? EFSA. Yes. EFSA, Financial Sector Assessment Program, EFSA. You don't like that?
Financial sector assessment program.
Buy any book.
Yeah.
Any book, because I can tell who didn't read, you see. And when they do that assessment, they include AML and terrorist financing in it, similar to what the FATF. So when you read it, you read what they find, and then you read their findings, which should more or less be on the same line. Y'all didn't know so much reading, eh? Thank God you don't have to memorize it.
Why writing papers are worse?
Huh?
Writing papers are worse.
Yes.
I prefer to memorize.
So the next international body is the UN. What do you think we get from the UN?
Sanctions,
Before you even get to the orders, you need to read all of the papers related to money laundering by the UN. What happened? Well, you'll ask. Under the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, you will find documents you need to read. If you go to 5.2, I think it'll be the same in your book, you have all the United Nations conventions. The Vienna Convention, the Merrill Convention, the UNCAC, and of course, the one on terrorism. And your book gives you a brief overview of each one. And you see when you read these 4 conventions from the UN that these, all of the actions that are taken by the FATF and in each jurisdiction, one whole form of act. These are a group of countries, the 10 largest countries in the world, coming together and signing treaties to enforce money laundering, terrorist financing. If you read the one on terrorism, it tells you that terrorism has been a concern from 1937, when they were discussing the League of Nations. So under all of these conventions, what the UN does, it executes resolutions. And when those resolutions are released by the UN, then the countries issue the economic ancillary orders. So all the ones you've been reading on Iran, Afghanistan, they come from the UN resolutions. And all the resolutions have a number. So what gets you an A is if you are able to identify the resolution that matches the question that you're answering. Examiners looking to see if you can tie in your local with the international. So the next one is the Basel Committee on Bank Supervision. And this website gives central banks, the guidance on how banks should operate, how payment systems should operate. So there are guidance on different things, guidance on risk management, guidance on AML, guidance on payment system, just guidance in general. So if you're writing from a banking perspective, you need to check and see if Basel has issued any guidance to the regulators for them to in turn issue to their licensees. And so when you go to the Central Bank of the Bahamas website and you see all of those various guidances and guidelines, they are adopted from the Basel document. That's where it comes from. And the Basel document is based on the international guidances and what's best practice in the industry worldwide.
So that would be equivalent with eight.
What he says.
It's also payment technology, prepaid cards, IPS, mobile payment systems.
This one is talking about vulnerability of products. Describe the international measures. They want you to go to all of these here and find out what do they write about them. That's a different one. That's a different research question. The one you're doing right now is terrorist financing. When you finish that, if you want to do E, you have to go and look and find what did they write about those. What you all do whispering? What you do whispering in the basket? So what?
He said 700, 800 words is a short essay.
Mhm.
So I said that's the indication to get to the point.
Yes.
Don't do the running on with the introduction and conclusion, get to the
You get to the
point.
point, you answer the question. And I'll advise you, you don't do it in one writing. You understand what I mean when I say not in one writing? No. That's what I mean.
You have to start
During the
early.
draft.
First draft, second draft,
Third draft, fourth draft, fifth draft, until it is succinct.
But I know some people who say they write their papers in 2 days.
Don't listen to that. You take advice from all these people, you will fail. Trust me. You cannot write it in 2 days. It's not possible. How is it possible?
You can.
Think about it.
That's all.
If you don't work, yeah. You can
No,
sit
it
down, but
depends
it
on
takes
where
more
you
than
work
that.
too.
Barely.
They may be doing this for work, so it's just a matter of putting it on the group.
Yeah. There may be someone who actually does
So,
it every
thank
day.
you.
So it's different.
And the UK.
But you've never done it? No. It's not that easy. And then they give you in the chapter, like some examples. They tell you the Basel committee has a document on account opening, and they tell you they have one on beneficial ownership. You have to go through the website because they have different documents. So you need to see what they wrote about terrorist financing. And then you can look and see what they did about prepaid cards, if any. I'm not telling you that it's there, so don't quote me. I said if any. You do your own research. I'm not answering it for you.
Well, that's like the story.
Never mind.
That's
That's not what I said. The next one is the OECD. So it says the OECD made a significant contribution to the global effort against money laundering by establishing the FATF. So when you go on the OECD website, they also have typologies. It says money laundering and harmful tax practices are two issues in which the OECD has significant interest in the last 10 years. And you know that. It's harmful taxes where CRS came from. The next one is the Egmont Group of Financial Intelligence Units. So this is, in here, there are also typologies. All the FIUs from around the world, they will report to the Egmont Group if they have any case that is of interest and where they can see there's a trend. So there are typologies here too. You will find a typology of terrorist financing. Then the next one is the NGOs. And the first one is the Wolfsburg. The Wolfsburg is normally turned to by those that deal with wealth management and private banking. And they issue guidances. Yes.
So the typologies is just a series of case studies to identify a trend.
Yes.
And they're asking the different
Trend and method,
and those.
how it was done.
Okay. Okay.
So the Wolfsburg is for private banking and wealth management. And they're normally guidances. When you read them, they are more practical, but again, they draw what they have to say from here and from here. And notice they also have a statement on financing of terrorism. You see the listing of all the different guidances that they've issued? The next one is Transparency International. And this speaks about the corruption index level for various jurisdictions. So by the time you finish your first draft, you should know what is the TI for the Bahamas. And I want you to recognize that if you decide to go into this arm as a profession, these are all the beginning of your source documents. and you build from there. And then they speak about the interface between money laundering and corruption. Again, they refer to the 40 recommendations. Then we refer to the FATF report on laundering the proceeds of corruption. And then there's another report called the specific risk factors in the laundering of the proceeds of corruption. So the same way you would look at money laundering versus terrorist financing, they've done the same thing with money laundering and corruption. They're showing you the interrelationship between the two. And sometimes how difficult it is for you to identify corruption and money laundering. You happy? That's good. So turn to the question. I'm not talking to you talk. I'm gonna read and then you tell me what it means. First sentence. Combating terrorist financing has been a priority and part of the wider strategy for the FATF since 2001. What are they telling you?
After when I was that World Trade?
2011.
I was
the
after
9/11
World Trade.
attacks.
So after that, they realized the deficiencies with regards to terrorist financing.
So, let me ask this side. Put it on. Mm-hmm. What you say?
Their scope and how they look at terrorist financing broadly since 2000.
Thank you. Your starting point for your research is from 2001. Simple as that. So at least they gave you a starting point. And they're telling you that over that time, that period between 2001 and 2020, it has been a priority. So if I were you, I would then look at everything that was done from then until now and show where the emphasis was placed on which year and what triggered that emphasis. You understand what I mean? So they issued 5 or 6 different things on terrorist financing. Which one of those were the important years? Because they say it's been a priority and part of a wider strategy. So let's look at first the priority. You have to decide which years were the important years after 2001. Then the next thing they say, part of a wider strategy. So what strategy did they take on? What did they combine it with? Who did they work with in order to carry this across different international bodies? Second sentence. Despite this, in 2015, the scope and nature of terrorist threats globally intensified considerably, with terrorist attacks in many cities across the world, and the terrorist threat posed by the so-called Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, and by Al-Qaeda and the affiliated terrorist organizations, and by other terrorist organizations also becoming more significant. What are they telling you?
You have to look at specific events.
Look at some of the threats, so what are these threats, we just specify these threats and then see how.
And notwithstanding making it a priority and focusing on it since 2001, terrorist activity has intensified.
Why?
They identified a trend between laundering money and terrorists. Terrorists were able to use money from legitimate and illegitimate sources to basically fund their acts of terrorism. And so it became a trend. So more and more.
And how do you validate that statement or that theory?
That's
Look
the
at case studies.
You have to look at the case studies. You can't write that if you can't validate it.
well, I was just going off of 2001. Which
Yeah,
is
but I'm
why
saying,
they-
no, what I just letting you know, when you make a statement, it has to be supported by a typology.
I'm sure I could find
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, you can find one, but I'm just saying. So what they're saying is that 14 years later, it got worse. So what comes to your mind now?
Considering that it got worse, that then.
Deficiencies. What is it that they didn't do right?
In 2000.
They issued their guidances, they broadened their strategy, which means that all of these are involved in it, but it's still intensified. And then I would get familiar with these groups. How did they intensify? How did they do it? And remember now, you're not looking at bombings, you're looking at how did they use whatever they use to finance it.
You look at leading up to the moment.
Yes. When you go online, they will give you an actual description of the flow of money, if you're good. They will tell you how money moved for different terrorist attacks. And based upon what you would have read, you'll be able to see the loopholes. Based upon what the FATF brought out, based upon what all these other groups brought out 14 years in that period, when you look at the way in which money moved to finance terrorism, you'll begin to see where there were weaknesses. Then they say the terrorist threat pose becoming more significant. So that means that the amount of financing for terrorism increased. And so when you write, you have to be able to demonstrate that in your answers. So the next one say, in February 2018, the FATF adopted new counter-terrorism financing operational plan and a statement on the actions taken under the 2016 counter-terrorist financing strategy. So when you read that, how is the examiner guiding you?
So you look at those recommendations from 2018 and the statement on the actions taken under and how they enhanced, I guess, what would have been done in 2016.
And while you read those, the 216 and the 218, in the back of your mind, you're looking at what did the terrorists do?
And how did these remedy?
Yes. Because you could come to the conclusion that, guess what, in 2016, whatever it was that they had recommended as their action plan really could not close the gap. Or you may say it did close the gap. Or you could say it halfway closed the gap. Because you're going to have a position. You can't go wishy-washy. Either you know or you don't know. Then it says, this focuses, the 218, focuses on key areas in the prevention of terrorist financing and the fight against financial crime. So that means you must go and read that document. In practice, the activity is notoriously difficult to distinguish from legitimate financial activity, as often legitimate methods are used to generate funds for the financing of terrorism. They're just making a statement, and that's based on typologies. And you'll see that when you do your own research on the activities of these various groups, how they maneuvered their monies to finance the terrorism through legitimate and illegitimate. So it says that this paper here focus on the key areas in the prevention of terrorist financing. And then they tell you it's still difficult. Even though they wrote this, they still have a difficulty. So the third paragraph says, discuss the FATF's role in combating terrorist financing. What are they asking for?
What measures they put in place, their recommendations, their guidelines, what have they done, over
And
the
is it
course?
enough?
And
Is it enough? What have they done? So they don't want you to write an essay, go in. No. That's not what they want. Discuss the FATF's role in combating terrorist financing. So you're not going to be giving a chronological listing. What's your focus on? What's the focus? Their role. Are they the leader? Are they at the forefront? Were the changes that they made or the implementation of them, were they the ones that were the catalyst for focusing on this terrorist financing and trying to address the issues? So when you write, you're gonna summarize everything that they did, their role. Were these people followers? And you only can know that if you've done all of these research from each one of these paragraphs, these sentences. So it tells you to outline the main typologies of terrorist financing and describe the challenges of identifying these activities in practice. So let's take the first part. First they tell you discuss the FATF role. Then they tell you outline the main typologies of terrorist financing. What are they looking for?
the trends and methods.
Outline the main typologies. What are they looking for? Hmm? Yes, you may answer that. You don't?
But the trends and methods.
No. What are they looking for? Trends and methods of what?
Case studies
Which ones?
linked to terrorist financing.
Too big. What are you looking for?
The payment. Of terrorist financing.
Stop right there. What are you looking for? Outline the main typologies of terrorist financing.
The main ways in which they finance. Main conduits.
What did I say to you from the beginning when we started discussing this question? Each one of these have typologies.
Different case studies.
Different case studies. They want you to pull out the
Correspond
main
across, so we
ones.
do a correlation then and see
Yes.
which ones are they, okay.
The main ones. The main one based on the role. Because the FATF, reading from the first two paragraphs, is the driver of terrorist financing, methods and trends. It then asks you to talk about, outline the main typologies. So if you're gonna argue that they are the driver, they want you to be able to discuss how it impacted these other organizations in the way in which they made their changes or they advised their various constituents, the main ones.
So basically, I mean, if we could put it in a simpler form, we are looking to see how the role that FATF has played in influencing these other international bodies in the recommendations that they make to
combat
specific,
terrorist
okay.
financing. And then they ask you to describe the challenges of identifying these activities in practice. So what are they asking you there? You keep looking, but you won't answer. Not you, you already answered. What are they
I
asking?
answered, to look at the case studies
Yes.
and identify the challenges
Mm-hmm.
as presented in the case studies.
Mm-hmm. And one of the challenges would be what?
Actually trying to stop it.
One of the challenges is what? Not stop them. It's hard to
Identify,
identify.
yeah.
It's like hard to identify. What you whispering? I heard you. So speak out loud.
I think we all think it is your thing.
What?
No, I just said this could drive me to drink.
I've heard it before. Drink, smoke. I've heard it before.
That's all I essentially.
So this is true.
Question.
We have to do this now. Seriously, we have to do this now. I told y'all that last week. That's why I push you all to read the legislation. You see how much is involved in answering this question? And you have 3 more to go.
So next one you do from July.
Oh, I needed you to let him print those other 2 for me before you leave, other 2 assignments.
Send it to the senior,
Yeah.
Just after a question
So,
before you.
go ahead.
Could we, I don't quite get how that from the question outlined the main typologies of terrorist financing. Like, I don't get the correlation between how it impacted the other organizations. Because reading the question, could you just re-explain?
Okay, outline the main typologies. Break down
The way you were explaining.
Okay. Then you start by saying that the FATF is the main driver of terrorist financing guidances. Its typologies and its papers. Right? That's where you're going to start from. Because that's what they're telling you, and here's a fact. That they're the one that drove all of the research, all of the methods, everything to do with terrorist financing. Trying to identify between legitimate and illegitimate and how they did it. At the beginning they started it, but it got worse. And then they went back, rethought it, came up with new guidances, issued a new paper in 2018. We're in 2020. So what they're asking you to do is first, discuss their role. Which means, after you've looked at all of this, you need to be able to start by saying the FATF was the main driver in organizing all other international bodies to focus on, pay attention to, prioritize terrorist financing. Due to the fact of the rise of all of these terrorist groups. Then you go terrorist group 1, terrorist group 2, terrorist group 3. And even though these things happen, the impact of the financial sector and the money laundering that took place, you explain. Because you have to summarize all of those things in just a few amount of words. Good, thank you. Then it says, after you've done that general point, they now ask you to outline the main typologies of terrorist financing. So when they say the main typologies, the FATF was not the only one that issued typologies on terrorist financing. If they are the main driver of it, they now want you to look at what other bodies did. And then they want you to pull out the main ones. Because one organization may have done 3, one may have done 2, one may have done 4. They want you to discuss the main ones. And when you discuss it, you could bring out similarities and differences. But you have to read them. Some of these saying the same thing. So you may start your paragraph by saying 5 different international bodies also address terrorist financing after the FATF brought out their recommendation in 2018. However, the challenges and the outline of the financing of terrorist activities were similar to what was already said on the FATF, mimicking what was already done, which really don't enhance terrorist financing and with a view to trying to guide financial institutions and other NDFMPs in addressing this issue. One sentence. It's done. But you gotta write it and rewrite it to get to that point. And then to say, describe the challenges of identifying these activities in practice, which means that you've already read your typologies. So when you read typology 1, wherever you've taken it from, if you read typology 1 from here, you've identified that there's 3 here. You've identified that there's 1 here. You've identified that there's 1 here. You understand where I'm going? When you read these, what is the question asking you to do?
Find the average.
Find the challenges. So when you finish reading them, on the top of that typology, you will have a sticker. Challenges. 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 So you put them together, because you may find there's a commonality. And when you summarize your challenges, you're looking for key things, which I'm not going to tell you. That's answering the question. You have to read it. So all of this is you have to drill down and then you have to summarize. So how many words do you need?
1,050.
30.
For 30 points?
If you do it as a percentage of the word,
Yeah, you do.
3,500
There you go. So you have to talk about all these groups and the challenges.
Yeah.
And at the end, you conclude whether or not they need to look at this again. What weekend? There's no weekends when you do this course. There's no weekends. Hmm?
The 2018 report, they say in February, yeah, but there's nothing they say in February 2018. They have a 2019 after the France attack,
Mm-hmm.
but they say in January 2018,
This is for the recruitment of terrorists.
this financing, but it's really.
This is an operational plan. Is that the operational plan? Oh, I can't tell
The
you.
2016 refers that an operational plan will be made, but ain't no
So
operational
you
plan.
need to look for operational plan, or you need to read whether or not they said they wrote an operational plan. After they wrote the plan, then they wrote that, so you need to find out. What did they do? All right, so where are you gonna start first? This is a heavy question. So we're back out of 100. If you lose 30, you're down to what point? Okay, boys, they're marking from 100. They're starting from 50. So let's go. 60 is a distinction. So let's go. If you, that's how hard it is.
Wow.
So if you lose this point on your voice assignment, where you looking at? What you looking at? Okay, so you need to do it now. There's no putting off.
Joshua,
Now.
first round on you.
There's 30 points to answer these 2 sentences right here. No, 1,000 words just for C. No. How much is B? How many words is B?
875.
875. 875 words here. What's A?
$700.
700.
And D is 875.
And they say, make sure your words proportionate to the amount.
75, oh, next page. Right there. Okay. What happened? Let's go to 8. 8 falls on the same track. What's unit 3? Stop it.
I see that there's been a tax funding for this week in 2019.
Okay, so A is on unit 5 and unit 2. Then you could tie in 3 too, but not really. And that's the last time I could think where something coming from.
You could have used.
No.
That's what.
No, no. She was sleeping. Okay. So we all read 8? Okay, what do they want?
The vulnerability of products and services.
Yes.
This product. The prepaid card.
So
And
what
what measures
you
is
put
in
on the
place?
international to minimize certain costs. And with firms can actually develop financial services to do something in the taxes, I guess.
Would you just read the same question?
I'm asking you, what are they looking for?
Recommendations.
What practices are
Some
in
of the
place?
measures that are being taken, for example, requiring the sender's information as well as requiring the information of the person who is receiving the payment in another country, so measures such as that to minimize the possibility of money laundering.
Where do you get international measures from? Where do you get it from?
Them.
Them. So the first thing you need to do is you need to go to them and look for typologies on these items.
Since the beginning of the question says, all questions can be answered in relation to a jurisdiction,
With
right?
which you are familiar.
Which I'm familiar with, this is Bahamas, right? I know we are heavily influenced by the FATF and the Basel Committee. Like, those are the main influences when central bank does their regulation. So, is it fair just to, not only to focus, but like for this question to chime in on that, on the FATF and Basel Committee, rather than trying to, obviously I'm gonna read everything, but I'm saying, like, because our jurisdiction, we're not heavily influenced by, like, for example, EU directives and
Oh, you mean from this group?
yeah.
Yeah. Remember I said it depends on how the question is worded. So far, A and B does not refer you to this.
Yeah.
Remember? It depends.
Yeah.
If they were talking about vulnerability of a particular product, select from your own jurisdiction. And I'm saying if you say you work at a Swiss bank, they expect for you to speak about both.
Okay.
For this question, you don't need the EU directives.
Okay.
Yeah, you need to look and read what are the international measures. So again, you go into those sites to look for typologies. And they tell you so I want you to look at the listing they gave you. They said prepaid cards, IPS, and mobile payment. They said such as. So what are they telling you? There are others. Exactly. So, if you're going to answer this, how are you going to answer it?
talk about other things that are listed. Go back to the legislation and see what types of
Find the
grant-based
technology.
payment are available to our jurisdiction. If they are some that aren't
The
listed here.
legislation won't tell you that.
Well,
What
you guys,
cases are common?
oh, I see. But that thing is.
What?
There's something we found.
Web-based payment technology. They gave you a listing here, so you need to find out what's the trend. What are they using now? What web-based technology are they using now that can add to this list?
Can't we find that in the case studies and the typologies? Like what have they found?
It depends on when they were done.
Digital things.
There are typologies on these, but you need to look at the date. Because I think from the time that these ones were done, there are new web-based payment technologies.
Are we dealing with like digital assets and stuff too? Is that considered a bad base? Like Bitcoin and all that
Crypto,
stuff?
yeah,
Cryptocurrencies.
Of course it is.
And
The light went off.
No, that's why I'd asked you earlier, if we are talking about, pending legislation, so draft bills, would we also
Before you get
discuss
the
that?
bending, they ask you for international measures first.
Okay.
Don't go running on and on and on, but something they didn't ask you about. Focus on the question first. International measures. And when you look at the international measures, what they want you to talk about?
So the minimizing.
How the guidance they give you to minimize the impact using technology. And then they give you the flip side of it by asking you to discuss how the financial institution can prevent and detect abuse. So it's both sides. Then you could throw in your Bahamian example. And the measures the measures that financial institution to prevent and detect will come from the typologies also. And then you throw in your Bahamian part of it. And what guidances that they have provided.
A bit of that can't be from like the risk assessment too, because in order
Yes,
to
you may
prevent-
find something in there.
in
I
order
mean,
to
our risk
prevent-
assessment.
Yeah, in order
Yes.
to prevent abuse, you have to identify like how exposed it is to risk.
Mm-hmm. But that's when you get to chapter 4, because chapter 4 speaks about different products and services and their vulnerability to money laundering. That's all it says. If you want to know how a product or service is used for money laundering, you have to read the typology. Because you need to see how the clients used it. And then how they were caught. How many more classes I have with you? How many more classes I have? 3. No. 3? You know?
Tell Anna tomorrow.
Okay. So unit 3 is on the legislation. That's B. Can't do B if you haven't read it. I need to read chapter 3. I have 3 more classes. And how many more chapters?
Unit 1 to 5.
3, 4,
4.
and 5.
Five is very, very long. Good. Okay, so next week we do unit 3, which means we would look at question B. I don't know if you'll be ready.
We can be ready.
4-1 is
You be
early.
ready?
4-1 is early.
So can I get my first draft of C?
Oh,
That's why I'm asking you.
Oh, okay.
We can work something out. Take it after.
Yeah. Because it doesn't make any sense, I'm going from one to the next one if you haven't started it.
Alright.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
We can put in some wood.
So will I get first draft?
Yeah.
Probably too bad, I move on.
That's all.
You know what this is? This is EDLS. 2.0. This is exactly. This is worse. We made for this. You got this.
I do EDLS.
Apologies. I'll keep doing that.
I just trying to help you because when I walk out, that's it.
I don't know.
Okay.
So the other ones will not do this.
You're right, I don't make her do this. Sweetie, you look your plans.
All of this is true. All of this. Download 3. So don't worry about the word count, because the word count comes when you do version 3, 4, and 5. I want to see version 1. First draft. If you're good, you can bring in the second draft.
If it's good enough, you can let us know if this could be the final job.
No, that won't be possible.
I mean, if it is.
You never know.
I've never seen it. Surprise me.
First time for everything.
Surprise me. So if you give me that first draft next week, and then we do 3, the week after, you will give me 8, and then, no. The last class, we will do the lecture on B and D, and you're on your own.
So if we see you like in.
No,
Monroe,
no.
I was gonna say that, I said email address and that works.
Well,
And another glass. So we need to get started. My glasses are never long. That means that when you leave here, you go to work. Yes. That is the purpose of it. I leave you so you don't say, oh, well, she can't be here till 9:30 and she really expected me. No. Go home and start work. Everybody sign? Yes, yes? Everybody sign, register? Yeah, Johnny Walker Blue. What happened to
she might be where I want to go.
Why? They skip class today, this time we go straight to the bottom. But she's gonna come next week and she will be looking up in the sky like, okay, what's she talking about?
She come with the conversation though.
Huh?
She come with the convo.
Yeah, but she missed. All right, get cracking, get cracking. You're welcome.
Sorry.